That is a G major scale. It's a recognizable tune. We learned it when we were young. Those notes make up the major scale, okay? And if you see on the screen, the G major scale, there are all the notes that are bolded: G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. And we assign a number to each one of those. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the 8 would be another G. That kind of ends that little song. G, G. So if we just eliminate that 8th note, the scale is basically 7 notes. And again, they're all assigned a number. So to make a major triad, we're going to play the 1, the 3, and the 5. Those 3 notes. If you look on a piano and you find those 3 notes and you play them, that's a G chord. It's the same on a guitar. When you play a G chord, okay, even though you might be strumming 6 strings, there's only 3 notes in there. A G, a B, and a D. Let's understand right off the bat that a major triad or a major chord is going to have the 1, the 3, and the 5. The 1 could be also called the root. The 3 could be called a major third, and then the 5 can be called a perfect fifth. But we'll just call them a 1, 3, 5 or a root 3 and a 5. A minor triad is slightly different. It just, we take that 3, and in the case of the key of G, the B, which would be the 3 on a major chord, we lower it just 1 note to a minor third or a flatted third. Okay, so that's the only note that's different. It sounds that's a G, and that's a G minor. Just understand that 1, 3, 5 for a major chord, 1 flatted third or minor third, and a 5 for a minor chord. As far as learning the notes of a scale, it's something you should do, but I'm really just trying to show you that the major scale is 7 notes out of the 12. Okay, there's only 12 notes on a guitar. It tends to show up a lot of places. But the pattern to create that major scale is the same no matter what note you start with. Like if we do it in the key of A, there would still be 12 notes, and you would skip from the A 2 notes, just like in the scale of G. You have a G, then you skip 2 notes to an A, which is considered a whole step, and then 2 more notes, another whole step. A whole step is jumping 2 notes to the B, and then a half a step to a C. Then a whole step to a D, whole step to an E, whole step to an F sharp. The formula would be from the root: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step. And then there's actually at the very end there's a half step to get you back to the G or to the root note. So it's whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half steps. There's an extra whole step on the end of that. So that's the formula. You don't need to memorize it. I just wanted to kind of show you how we come up with a chord, basically. And today we're going to talk about triads and just different ways to play chords. An open chord is any chord where there's an open string ringing. And here you're looking at an A, a C, actually a C. I'm going to play it the way it's pictured. Lots of times we'll play a C where we put our ring finger, on that G string. Makes it sound fuller, but there's a reason why a C chord is notated just playing from the 5th string down, and I'll explain that. Same with a D. We're really just playing those 4 strings. We could throw the A in there. Okay, and E is you're playing all 6. Okay, nice rich chord, and a G. You can either put your ring finger on that B string, because that adds a D note, which is in a D note is the 5, and we'll get to that. Or you can lift that finger and play the B note, which is the 3rd. So either way, kind of sounds more jingle jangly when you fret it, fret that B string, but feel free to play it open, right? But that's what we consider an open chord, when there's 1 or more unfretted strings. Now, when we look at these shapes, this is kind of the beginning of identifying these triads, okay? And we're going to look for triads that begin on the 4th string, the 4th, the 3rd, and the 2nd string. All right. When we look at each of these chords, let's look at the notes that are on the 4th, the 3rd, and the 2nd string to see if we have a 1, a 3, and a 5. Okay, in the case of an A, yes, we do. Those those three strings, the fourth, third, and second string, we have a root, we have a third, and we have a 5. So we have a 1, a 3, and a 5. Look at the C. Same thing. We're just looking at the fourth, third, and second string. Do we have a 1, 3, and a 5? Yes, we do. And that's going to be a shape you want to remember, and we'll see it on the next slide. Then the D, you look at those three middle strings, the fourth, third, and second string, and you don't have a third in there. Okay, the third's over on the E string, so we're not going to consider that a triad. Again, we're specifically looking at the fourth, third, and second string. Then you look at an E chord and look at those strings, and you have a 1, a 3, and a 5. Look at the G, and you don't have a 1, 3, and a 5. You have a 1 and a 5. That being said, we've identified the three triads beginning on the fourth string, in this case for G major, but it'll work for any other key. But I have them pictured. These are all G chords because I do show their location, the fret. So when you look at the first one, root position, there's three formations here, and we're going to call them the root position triad. All that means is that the root is in the bass. Then you have a first inversion where the third is in the bass, okay? And then the second inversion where the fifth is in the bass. The other thing that's pretty helpful when you learn these three shapes is as long as you know where the root is, the 3 and the 5 kind of follow it if you go to the next string. So when you look at the root position formation, you have the root, then you move over a string and then you have the 3, and move over another string and you have the 5. In the first inversion, if you look where the root is, okay? And again, learn where the root is on these three formations. So the root's on that B string, okay? So that's the 1. And then you can start over, and you have the 3 and then the 5. Then you go to the second inversion. There's the root. It's in the middle. Move to the right. You have the 3, and then you start over, and you have the 5. So the order of these intervals, okay, which is what we call root, 3, and 5, they stay in that same sequence, okay? It's just they kind of loop around because we're only focused on these triads beginning on the fourth string. And again, major chord made up of a 1, a 3, and a 5. The 1 could be called the root. The 3 has a little triangle in this diagram, and that just means major. And the P in front of the 5, that just means perfect fifth. When you look at it, you're just looking at a 1, a 3, and a 5. I superimposed what a normal chord is because I want to give each of these shapes another name, especially if you're playing with another player and trying to explain these, or you say, oh yeah, play that in the root position, or the E shape. So I call this the E shape, the root position, because when you look at it, we kind of extracted that from what an E chord looks like. So if you look at the other little ghost notes I put in there on this root position diagram, we have that triad in the middle, and then I filled in the other notes that would form an E chord. Considering that we're not at the third fret, let's pretend that that's the nut. The way you play an E chord is like that. So we're really just picking out those three notes that are in the middle. That include a 1, a 3, and a 5. Move over to the first inversion there in the middle. I call this a C shape because that's where we derived this shape from. When you play a C chord, that 7th fret in this diagram would be considered the nut. The root is kind of where you would normally put your index finger to play a C chord in the open position. But when you're playing these triads, sometimes I just use my index finger to kind of bar. In this case, on the 7th fret, I kind of bar the three strings in the middle, the fourth, the third, and the second string. And then I put my middle finger and ring finger where the root and where the third is. But I consider that the C shape. So you have an E shape, which is the root position shape, the first inversion, which is the C shape, and then we're pretty familiar with that, the second inversion where it looks like an A, right? So I superimposed the notes of how an A chord looks. Now, and these are all G chords. So in the case of a G chord, if you want to play a G chord in the shape of an A chord, you have to play, you have to slide that thing all the way up where you're playing those three strings on the 12th fret. Not real common to go up that high, but just to get the point across of what these triads look like. And these are major triads, and they're the three that you really need to learn. The root note in this in the root position is in the bass. The first inversion, it's on the B string, and then the second inversion, it's in the middle. Most importantly, it's what note is in the bass for each. The root position, the 1 is in the bass. The first inversion, the 3 is in the bass, and the second inversion, the 5 is in the bass. When I say in the bass, it's just that is the lowest sounding string of those three. Okay? Let's look at minor chords. So this is how you play minor chords. We're familiar with most of them. The A minor, we played that a million times. It's one of the chords we learned early on because it's a lot shaped kind of like the E shape. The next one is C minor. Now I never play a C minor like this, but in theory, that's what a C minor looks like. If you try to finger that, it's very difficult, and I don't think it has a great voice. So generally, when you play a C minor, you're going to play sort of that A minor shape and just bar it up on the third. D minor, that's kind of how we play it. We put those three fingers on the first three strings in that order, and you let the D string ring. Okay, that's open. The E minor, pretty easy. One of the first chords you learned. You have two fingers on those two strings. You're letting the other four ring, and you're capturing a 1, 3, and a 5. Or actually, a flatted 3, and we'll talk about that. And then a G minor, another chord that I don't play it like this. A G minor, normally I bar at the 3rd fret and play it like an E minor. So yeah, the thing with the minor chords is now we take that 3rd and we flatten it. So if you just look at the A minor shape, that first one, that flatted 3 has moved back a note. If we moved it up, you look at it like, oh yeah, that's an A chord. Yeah, because it has a 1, a 3, and a 5. But when we lower that 3, now we have that A minor shape. So that's what we've done there. Again, just keep that 1, 3, and 5 in your mind. That's how you make a chord, either a major or a minor. So let's look. These are the 3 little triads that we're going to be focused on. All right. So again, we're looking at these the 3 strings in the middle, the 4th, the 3rd, and the 2nd string, and seeing if we can come up with a 1, a 3, and a 5, or a flatted 3 and a 5 root. A 1, a flatted 3, and a 5. Or we can do it with an A minor. We can actually do it with this C minor shape, okay, because we'll only need 3 fingers to play that shape. And the D minor, look at those 3 strings in the middle. Nope, you have a root, you have a 5, and you have another root. So you don't have a 3 on those 3 strings in the middle. And then an E minor, this is something doable. Okay, we have a root, we have a flatted 3rd, and a 5. And G minor, we don't have it there either. That is a formation I generally don't play that way. So we've identified the 3 triad shapes that we're going to employ. And let's give them names, and the same rules apply here for these triads. So these are G minor triads, but they work for depending where that root note is. But on this slide, it's where the G would be. That root position, again, root position, the root is in the bass. And I consider this an E minor shape. If you just go back and you see that E minor, okay, we've captured all 3, but that's that E minor shape. The first inversion, I call that a C minor shape. Again, it's sort of that little triangle that we really don't normally play in the open position for a C minor. But if we slide that thing up where we're up on the 7th fret, that's a G minor. Good thing to know. So know that shape. And the root, of course, is going to be on the B string. First inversion, the flatted 3rd is in the bass. And then the second inversion, the 5 is in the bass. Okay, and this is a very familiar shape. That's kind of like an A minor shape. Now, remember, when you're playing these triads, you're kind of focusing just on those 3 strings. You hit other open strings or other fretted strings, and you might be adding something other than a 1, a flatted 3rd, and a 5. Which is fine. You discover a lot of stuff. But learn these 3 shapes. Okay, these are 4th string minor triads. I superimpose the other notes in those chords to kind of just validate or verify that, yeah, we're going to call this an E minor shape because we've derived this triad from a normal E minor looking chord. Likewise, although you might not be familiar with it, the C minor shape, we're really just looking at that little triangle that we're fretting. We generally don't play a C minor like this. We have a 1, a flatted 3rd, and a 5 in that triangle. So this is a first inversion minor triad. Depending where it is on the fretboard, wherever that root note is, that's the name of the chord. So that's why it's kind of important to start to, if you don't already know the notes on the fretboard or how to figure them out, work on that. I would suggest you work on learning the low E string first, then the A string. Okay, now that we've done the 4th string triads, and showed you the 3 major inversions and minor inversions, let's look at the triads that are on the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string. And let's go back to looking at how we play these open chords and see where we can find a 1, a 3, and a 5 on those first 3 strings. And if you look at an A, there we go. We have a 1, a 3, and a 5. If you look at the C chord, on those first 3 strings, you have a 1, a 3, and a 5. And the D, here's the thing, the D is kind of the same as the C. It's just moved up 2 frets. That triad end up calling a D shape. And then you have E with a root, okay, a 1, a 3, and a 5 on the first 3 strings. So that's, that's in the game. But you look at the G and you have actually 2 roots or 2 1s and a 5. You don't have a 3 on those first 3 strings. So they are the 3 shapes that you're going to look at. The A shape, okay, the D shape, could call it the C shape, but I'm calling it the D shape because that's when I put my fingers on the fretboard like that, I kind of refer to it, oh, that's how you play a D. You don't really call that a C shape, even though there is a little triangle at the top of the neck when you play an open C. And then the E. The E chord, when you play an E chord, you're playing a 1, a 3, and a 5 on those first 3 strings, but not on the G. So they're your 3 shapes. They were the majors. Let's look at the minors, and I'll kind of give them to you. But we look at an A minor. This is how we play an A minor, and there's the 1, 3, and 5. Play a C minor. The C minor is kind of weird because you don't really play it this way, but on the C minor, in the open position, you don't have a 1, a 3, and a 5 on the first 3 strings. So go to the D minor. D minor, you do. You have a 1, a 3, and a 5. The E minor, you have a 1, a 3, and a 5. G minor, you don't. Okay, so here's your 3 triad shapes for minor chords beginning on the 3rd string. Okay, a lot of little caveats here, but if you learn all of these shapes, and then you know what they're called. So in the case of the A minor shape, the root position, the root is in the bass. Okay. Second inversion. Let's go to first inversion. So if you look at that E minor shape, this is the first inversion. The 3 is in the bass, and then the second inversion, which would be that D minor shape, the 5 is in the root position, or in the bass position. So learn these shapes, and also remember the order of these notes. So if you know where the root is, you know that the 3rd is next to it. It's the next string over, heading east in a chord diagram. All right, or heading to a thinner string. And then from the 3, if you keep moving right, there's going to be the 5. And of course, if the root is in the middle and you move to the right, it's going to be, a 3rd, and then you have to start over to get to the 5. And the E minor shape, it starts with the 3, then goes up to a 5, and then you start again to the root. So that sequence repeats itself. So you always know, as long as you know where the root is, you can figure out the other notes. That's about it. But where it's going to help you, and I show this little figure a lot where I'm playing an A and then I go to a D, which would be that C shape. But if I'm just playing, those 3 strings, and actually when I do this for the A, I try not to play that high E, because I'm kind of, it's not really an E. I'm fretting it on the 2nd string, so it's an F sharp. So, and there's not an F sharp in an A. But, I play A, D like this. Yeah, that's an E triad, when you're playing those. So there's all these little triads you can try with those shapes. So good luck.